Hey guys, welcome back to the Babbling Pastor Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything amazing. I'm your host, Michael.
Or is that different? Is that a different guy? No. We just read about okay, no, different guy. My bad.
Okay, so
not in fact an archangel. That's my fault.
No, not an archangel. Though I don't know if that's maybe who I was named after. I don't know. I mean, I have the physique of an angel, or so I'm not told. Okay, so we're getting it today. If you missed the first two episodes, you're going to probably need to at least pause this at the very least and read Jude verses 1 through 13, because we've talked about that in the first and second episodes, and those are, I don't know, kind of important contextually to what we're going to read today. Today is actually a shorter section. We're only doing 14 through 19 in this, but this is where we kind of, Jude is continuing sort of the theme that we've looked at in the first couple episodes, the judgment of God against those that rebel, essentially, is what we've seen at this point. Not only those that are rebelling currently in the church that Jude is writing to, but throughout the history of God's people. So I'll read real quick verses 14 through 19, and then we're going to kind of dive right in. Starting at verse 14, it was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they committed in such ungodly ways, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These are gluttons, malcontents, following their own sinful desires. They are loud-mouthed boasters, showing favoritism to gain advantage. But you must remember, beloved, the predictions of the apostles of our Lord Jesus Christ. They said to you, in the last times there will be scoffers, following their own ungodly passions. It is these who cause divisions, worldly people devoid of the Spirit. So a lot of kind of the same thing that we've been looking at. Again, just sort of pointing back essentially to point forward, specifically referencing the Book of Enoch here, which I think is we can chat about for a minute as well. So
yeah. So Enoch. What do we know about him from our scriptures?
Seventh from Adam.
And that he didn't die.
He didn't die, yeah.
Like that's the big Bible story. In the who didn't die? Eli and Enoch, right? Yep. Those are the kinds of things that do make the flannel graph in Sunday school back in the day, right? Yeah. But Enoch is actually something that, again, he's quoting from, and you mentioned in a previous episode about him quoting from extra biblical sources. Mm-hmm. So the Book of Enoch would have been something that Jewish, first century Jewish people would have looked to. Mm-hmm. It was a book that wasn't authoritative in the same way that the Torah or the prophets or the Psalms or whatever would have been. Nevertheless, it was like the Apocrypha is kind of, it's some of the things in there are historical documentation, some things that you can glean from for sure. It's just not necessarily authoritative over someone's life the same way that the scriptures are. So anyway, but he uses the Book of Enoch, and he quotes from Enoch chapter 1, verse 9. And it's actually this, it's actually good that he quotes from it, but what Enoch says here is exactly what Jude has been talking about the whole time. He just very plainly says it. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such ungodly way.
He's trying to make a point.
all the harsh things that the ungodly sinners have spoken against him. There's a lot of ungodly happening there. Like that's the point of what Enoch had to say. I think it's interesting too that he calls Enoch. I mean, essentially, he says he was a prophet. He prophesied this, and so that you wouldn't get anywhere else if Jude didn't say it here. Really, I mean, but yeah. So the Book of Enoch is something that adds, I think, to we talked in a previous episode last month about, I think it was last month. Anyway, the when we talked about the Nephilim and all of that stuff fairly recently, the Book of Enoch actually helps add some context.
Some it talks more depth into what happened there.
Adds some context into the scriptures, at least as to how the scriptures that we have, how the people who read them and wrote them would have been thinking, because of the culture and the things that they believed and had been taught and that sort of thing. So
and I think it's important here when we're especially, so I think the distinction you made is important for a lot of people to understand. So growing up, I'd assume most people's growing up in church, even though obviously age different and cultural difference as far as like where you live is going to vary, but by and large, most of the time the Book of Enoch is not talked about, definitely probably not going to be read. But this idea that even the disciples had an understanding that there were more authoritative scriptures than others, I think is important, but they weren't afraid to shy away from referring to them when they believed that they were actually helpful in understanding the more authoritative words that had been spoken. And I think sometimes, depending on what circles you run in, as far as within Christianity, some people would not even want to talk about the Book of Enoch. They'd be like, it's not in the Bible, we ain't reading it. Well, Jude specifically references it as something that isn't necessarily authoritative, but is incredibly helpful in regards to pointing out exactly what he's saying is an issue here. And I think also good call on the whole Enoch being a prophet of his day, at least in the sense that he's seen, and I think this goes back again to what we've already talked about. Like the problem Jude's dealing with isn't a Jude only problem. The problem we're dealing with isn't our time only issue. Like this goes back all the way back to the fall. Like there's always going to be ungodly people doing ungodly things, following ungodly passions. I mean, this isn't new, which is, I think, what he makes that connection into verse 16, but he also talks about it in verse 17 and 18 too, where he's saying like, this isn't new. This shouldn't be surprising to you, but when it is surprising to you, just remember that we've already talked about this before. Like, I think sometimes we're so shocked by sin because we're so sanitized to certain situations in life, or like maybe how we were brought up or what we understand to be true, and the lives that we've seen change, that when you come in contact with horrible things, it's a little shocking to you. But Jude's point seems to be like, yeah, that's kind of always happened. So don't be surprised by it.
Yeah, I think that it's actually neat to me that he uses, I mean, he could have used any one of the prophets, because there isn't a prophetic book in scripture that you couldn't have said the same thing from at some point, right? Yeah. The idea that God and his hosts are going to execute judgment, to execute judgment on all, good, bad, and ugly, right? And to convict all the ungodly of their deeds, and of deeds done and deeds spoken, essentially it says, right? But this is throughout all of scripture. He could have used any one of the prophets, but it's it's neat to me that he uses Enoch, who is seventh from Adam, right? From that long ago. And this is someone who long before Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, but long before any of these other prophets that we think about walked the earth, this is someone who was a long time before them, and who was saying the same thing. And it still holds true, right? Like, and you talked about how you shouldn't be surprised about it, and he actually says that, which I enjoy, right? He because it is a surprise. I mean, to us, I think about the culture today, in which you'll have someone who you watched preach or something for a long time, and you think, oh, that dude's great, and then you see him like spiral downhill or blow up in a volcano or something, and it's like, holy smoke, I had no idea. And then there's this letdown, right? When and some of that could certainly be the you look up to that person too much, and not, but I think some of it is just genuine, like, man, like genuine struggle and mourning and disappointment, because someone that either you thought was a strong believer but isn't even a believer, or someone who you just looked up to and thought was a strong believer has proven to at least be an immature baby Christian in some ways, right? So there is a real kind of mourning thing that happens there, and I think part of it is because you feel like you get gut punched a little bit. Like, I don't know if I assume because you're so with it in the culture today, that
currently, I don't even know the word to use. I'm sorry.
I assume that you at least heard of or listened to part of the Mars Hill thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. So that's a good example of what I'm talking about, right? Like that. There's a bit of that if you're particularly a dude who was coming of age Christian in your Christian walk, under kind of Driscoll and the whole Mars Hill thing, then you listen to that, no matter what conclusions you draw or come away with, you listen to that, there are going to be moments where you feel like crap.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same thing when Jude is actually saying to them, in verses 17 and 18, look, you have to remember the predictions of the apostles, right? Like, this is not a new thing. We cannot be surprised by this. Satan is at work the same way that God is. Satan doesn't want this thing to succeed, even though God has said that it will. They said to you, in the last time there will be scoffers following their own ungodly passions. So again, he talks about ungodly passions, like the want to of the flesh, this idea of sensuality. And but the fact that it shouldn't be a surprise, it doesn't make it go away when you're surprised by something like that. But it does, I think, give us a place to land, right? That, like, instead of just having a rug come out from underneath us and realize, oh wait, now I'm Wile E. Coyote, there's literally nothing under me, the rug was on nothing. We can realize that no, there's a floor under it, and this did surprise me because I wasn't expecting it. This does make me kind of grieve, because it shouldn't be like this, right?
Yeah.
When you see somebody fall, or when the ones that make the news are the ones you hear about, but we all know this in our own personal lives, right? Like, people around us who fail or fall or fail us or whatever, maybe don't act like Christians one day, right? But that kind of thing shouldn't surprise us, right? This is a war that's going on.
Well, and I think that is a really important distinction in regards to exactly what he's speaking to as far as how they probably feel about it, because they thought they were doing great. They thought they had it all figured out, but yet there's these people in here doing these things. And I think it does go back to sort of his main point that he's making, that like we have this proclivity that we're going to try to make it like our authority. We're going to put that on people. We're going to put authority on people. We're going to put, weight on people. We're going to give them the, and he's talked about, well, when we talked about last week with Archangel Michael and like disputing with the devil, he said, the Lord rebuke you. The idea being that God has the authority. The thing that these false teachers are doing, they're trying to usurp God's authority. They're trying to speak over God's authority. Mm-hmm. And tying that into what he's saying here is that, this was predicted, this idea that I think sometimes we really overemphasize our own goodness or our own expectations, so that when the rug does get pulled out, we are a little surprised by it, because we don't think sin is as possible as it really is. So when that rug gets pulled out, we are surprised, because in our head, we didn't think that they or we or the situation could ever get that bad, when that's actually sort of the default position without Jesus, without understanding that God is authority over all things, that without him, that's where we would instinctively be. And so I think that's part of the surprise too, is that like, so Mars Hill, right? So when, I look up to Mark Driscoll forever, and then that goes away, and I'm just like, what in the world? Like the authority was put in the wrong place. The expectation was put in the wrong place. No pastor is going to be able to, again, I think it was very important that you pointed out the sensuality part, because it's not just sexuality. It's lust for power. It's greed. It's want to be known and have notoriety and have authority over everything. And one of the things, and this was my mistake, but I think we could definitely go back and look at it in tying to verse 6. So he talks about all of this, and he says in verse 16, these are grumblers, malcontents, following their own sinful desires, loudmouth boasters, showing favoritism for gain, is sort of the continuum of his pattern, where is again my bad, but we didn't look at it in verses in 12 and 13 as well last episode. And I know you were hinting at it, and then I kind of skipped over it, but where he talks about how they are there. Like these two things sort of go together, where he's saying, look, they're only there for their own good. They're only there for their own gain. They're going to shipwreck you. They look like they're bringing great things, but nothing comes from them. Like he's showing that, like, this is what these people look like. This is where sinful desire gets you. This is where sensuality brings you. This is where anytime you usurp the authority of God and say that you are better, your ideas are better, your way is better, this is what it's always going to look like. It's going to look really promising, but it's not going to bring you to a place where you need to be. So you can show favoritism, but it's just for their own advantage. They can boast, but there's nothing behind it. To go back to verses 12 and 13, right? Like they're clouds, but they're waterless clouds. They're trees, but they're fruitless trees. Like there's this appearance of this very promising thing, but behind the appearance, there's nothing there, because the authority they're standing on is worthless, basically.
Yeah. This sensuality is the common theme. That's the thing that's wrong with the picture, right? The thing that's at the heart of who these people are. In verse 4, calls them ungodly people who pervert the grace of our God into sensuality, deny our only Master and Lord Jesus Christ. Verse 12, he calls them shepherds feeding themselves, right? The very thing that you're there to do as a shepherd is to feed the sheep, right? And rather than that, you're concerned with making sure you feel good, right, at the end of it. And then 16, following their own sinful desires. And then they're there to gain advantage. Verse 18, there will be scoffers following their own ungodly passions. It all is boiling down to, it's about me I'm God. I am my own God. Feed me, give me what I want when I want it, and don't ask questions. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, well, so yeah. So the biggest point here, and this is where I think it has a ton of connection. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs; they're going crazy.
I,
No, good. Well, I just gave myself away. Very professional, high quality podcast here. So the idea here, in correlation to what we're seeing now, is that you will have a lot of people that, and I've seen this tweeted. I've heard this on videos. I've had people tell me this, that anytime you go back and reference, for example, scripture, this is what God says, this is his decrees, this is what he has dictated and how we should live and what it should look like. There's always this either attack on what it says, or there's this weird twisting of saying like, well, you're making God the fourth part of or the Bible the fourth part of the Trinity now, because you're worshiping the Bible because this is what it says. And it is this usurping of authority of saying like, well, I know better than it. You're actually worshiping this scripture, and so you're an idolater too. Is essentially, it's basically an attempt to twist it to be like, well, I know better than that.
an asinine, ignorant, ridiculous argument.
I'm just saying, it's said all the time, and it's always said by people that don't want to be held accountable to what the scriptures have actually said, in some twists of weird irony.
Maybe from now on we shouldn't even word it like that. We should just say what God said, because like that's the point.
Well, they would immediately come back just like the false teachers and be like, well, God didn't say it though. He said it through men that can be mistaken, and we're trying to understand him in the best way that they knew how to understand him, and they were flawed individuals, and they got that one wrong. Well,
everybody who's listening right now, get on Google and search verbal plenary and believe that. There, then that'll solve it.
But that'll solve all your problems, guys. But anyway, so that the irony of it is that is essentially at the core of what he's talking about. He's saying that these people are usurping their authority. They're saying, like you've already said, it's all about me. And if God doesn't bend, or my version of God doesn't bend to what I believe to be what I should do, then, well, you're out of luck, guys, because I'm going to follow this.
Yeah, and isn't it ironic that it all, man, as you look through the scriptures, right, and get down to the heart of all, like, some of this would have been sexual immorality, some of it would have been other things, some of it would have probably been grasping for power and the feeling of my authority, that kind of thing. But as you look at throughout all scripture, right, and you dig around, you come back to the same old thing, that this following their own sinful desires, right, showing favoritism to gain advantage, following their own ungodly passions, pervert the grace of God into sensuality, shepherds feeding themselves. This whole idea of sensuality, following my own desires, my own flesh, I'm my own God, leave me alone, don't tell me what to do, started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away in the Garden of Eden, when they were presented with the very first opportunity to be God, right? And that's what they wanted to do. The first desire, the sinful desire within them, was not, that looks like a really good apple. The desire in them was when Satan said, what?
Did God really say?
Yeah, God didn't say that. He just doesn't want you to know that you can be like him. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's all the same thing. And it still is the same thing today. Our culture, we've referenced it a bunch of times already, but our culture today is no different. Like, that's the driving force behind all of it. I'm my own God. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me that I have to be this gender or that gender. Don't tell me that I have to do this or that. Don't tell me that I must be married or I'm living in sin if I do this with my boyfriend or girlfriend. Don't tell me what to do. I'm my own God. That's always been the sin.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, again, I mean, going to all of it. Don't tell me how to spend my money. Don't tell me what life is and
Right.
what life isn't. Don't tell me, you know, what I can and cannot say. Like, all of it is, or in regards to like toward other people, like all of it goes back continually to what you just said, like wanting to be the one in charge. So is there any ending thoughts you have on these short verses here, other than what you've already said in a very good way?
Yeah. I think I just puked it all up right then.
No, that's good. That's good. And I think that's
surprised or hurt or disillusioned when you see sin in the church. I mean, honestly, it should lead us to do what Jude is doing. It should lead us to passionately understand that, like, it's necessary for me to engage, right? Not as a jerk who's just coming and going, look, you're an idiot, right? But as someone who's genuinely concerned, which we're actually going to see more of here in the next episode, but someone who's genuinely concerned for the church who might be led astray, and even for those whom he's warning indirectly. You know, there's concern there. It's not one of surprise, because again, not only here, but we have all through all over the place. We shouldn't be surprised when people's flesh takes over, right? It's part of our knee-jerk reaction sometimes when Jesus gets out of the picture a little bit and we find ourselves walking on water that we can't do, right? So
exactly. And I think the last thing I would say, just really in verse 19, before he kind of switches gears a bit, he does say, these are the ones that are causing the divisions. These are the ones that are worldly. And there's this last thing in 19 is a pretty heavy criticism toward them, and they are devoid of the Spirit. I mean, these are the people that he's talking about are godless people. They have not been redeemed. They have not been renewed. They do not have the Spirit in them. And that is a pretty, again, he's drawing a line there, where making a them and us a statement that they are not part of the body. They do not know who Jesus is, which he's already said that at the beginning of verse 4, but just kind of reintroducing that here at the end, warning them exactly who they're kind of dealing with, so that they're aware that, some of these people may not understand biblical reasoning because they don't have a way to understand it. They're worldly. They're thinking that way. They're devoid of the Spirit. They're not going to understand spiritual things, which I think like you said, I'm very interested to get in this last section next week, because I think he goes from this really hard hitting thing to where, even though he says, I wanted to write to you about our common faith, but I have to do this, he sort of still sneaks it in here at the end anyway, because it's too good not to talk about. So,
yep.
All right, guys. So next week, we'll be looking at 20 through 25, the end of the letter to Jude. So go ahead and read ahead. I'm going to quiz you on it next week somehow through the internet. So I'll talk to you later.
Bye. Go and sin no more.